everyone. Welcome to another episode of Positive Parenting with Astrology. I am your host, Maria Riegger, and also your resident Gemini. And today we're talking about how to best connect with your Capricorn children. So before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Hit that bell to get your regular Positive Parenting with Astrology content. I want to ask you, how is your relationship with your Capricorn child? Do you have any questions about Capricorn? Do you face any challenges, particular challenges you would like help with? Capricorn is a stoic, private, reserved energy. So sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for parents to figure out what the Capricorn children are thinking and feeling. And we're going to talk about all of that today. First, just a brief recap. Capricorn is a cardinal feminine energy sign and an earth sign. So cardinal is the modality. That means it's a sign that's always moving forward, intent on advancement, intent on achievement. Okay. If you are a fixed energy parent like Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, those are fixed energy signs, then you may, and you have a Capricorn child, then you may have some difficulty or resistance in this manner because your Capricorn child may be impatient with you and the way your fixed energy works. So, but remember that it's an energy that is always intent on moving forward and advancing. Okay, it's also a feminine energy sign. That means that it's a little bit more passive than masculine energy signs. So Capricorn being a feminine energy sign, it's a little more controlled and more calculating, and the energy is focused a little bit more internally. When you have a masculine energy sign, like fire signs, for example, they're the type, it's a type of energy where fire signs are very impulsive and quick to act. Capricorn is slow to act and is more calculating about its movements. It will consider things from all angles before acting, whereas fire energy, masculine energy, is more impulsive. Another interesting thing that another astrologer told me about her position on Capricorn children is that these children are old when they are young and young when they are old. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail. So when they're kids, they're kind of like old souls. They're very responsible, dutiful, and they're very quick to take on added responsibility and added burdens, even as children. They have this sense of, I guess, not self-importance, but they consider things, they're very serious. So they consider things very seriously. They're not like, the energy is not happy-go-lucky like maybe a Sagittarius and Gemini energy is. So they may feel a sense of duty and responsibility even when they're very young. And then when Capricorn people grow up and become adults, eventually they tend to, not always, but they can tend to kind of realize all the fun, childish things they missed out on in life, and they can tend to enjoy those a little bit more in adulthood. I've seen that play out in my life and other people's lives. I have a Capricorn moon. You know that if you've been watching these videos. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. Capricorn is also, it's an energy that likes to have control over its environment. This is largely due to its being an earth sign. It needs material security and stability in relationships, in the family, things like that. Capricorn also likes to have control and even dominate its environment. And as kids, that's where a lot of the parent-child tension comes out when you have a Capricorn child, is Capricorn gets very bent out of shape when it feels like its stability is threatened, either family stability or relationship stability. And kids don't always have the words to articulate what they're feeling and what is wrong. So children often act in a way that we adults call misbehaving, or they behave in an oppositional way. That's what parents call it sometimes. But really the behavior is communicating the problem, that the fact or the idea that the child is going through something and needs extra attention. And it's the parent's job to figure out what the child's emotional needs are. Capricorn is also an energy that likes to be right. Frankly, Capricorn people are right much of the time. And this is another area where parent-child conflict can come about. If you saw my video on how to parent a Capricorn child when you're an Aries mom or dad, Capricorn kids like to be right. Aries parents like to be right. Aries is very stubborn. It's the first sign of the zodiac. So that's a source of a lot of parent-child tension when you have those signs involved. So remember that about your child. They like to be right. Don't lord it over them when they're wrong. Okay. Just move on. Don't make them feel bad. Okay. Next, we're going to get into the specific ways you can connect with your Capricorn child. Number one, give these children lots of age appropriate independence and autonomy. Capricorn loves to be in charge of themselves. As kids, they love having some responsibility. They love being in charge of their schedules. When they're older, love being in charge of their schedules, of their activities, of their homework. So a lot of these tips we're going to talk about today are really geared toward children who are 7 years old and older. Around age 7 is kind of the developmental age when children really start to aggressively assert their independence and autonomy. This is a normal stage of childhood development that should be encouraged by parents. So you will find with your Capricorn children that this sense of wanting to have responsibility and ownership over their lives really starts to appear very strongly around age 7 and then older. So to meet that emotional need that Capricorn has, you need to give them plenty of age appropriate responsibility and autonomy. Give them chances to have more say in things that happen to them. Let them pick meals once in a while. Let them be in charge of their schoolwork. Capricorn children do very well managing their school workload and things like that when the parents are not helicoptering over everything they have to do. Okay. In my house, my child is not a Capricorn, but he's very responsible with his schoolwork. I ask him, hey, have you done your homework? Yes, that's the extent of it, right? And I check his grades once a quarter. And as long as he's getting decent grades, meaning the grades aren't important, but the grades are indicative of whether or not he's understanding the material that will help him later in life. So I check to make sure that he's understanding the material that will serve him later in life. And that's the only thing I do. I don't helicopter over his homework. I used to, but I found out that he did much better and our relationship was way easier if I just stepped back and gave him more ownership over his workload and over his schedule. So make sure you're giving your Capricorn child plenty of opportunities to have a say in things that happen to them. Okay, that's on the one hand. On the other extreme, make sure you are not parentifying these children. So parentifying is a psychological term we've talked about in other videos where the parent treats the child like almost like the child is the parent of the parent, like giving the child adult level responsibilities. So on the one end, you have one extreme, you have a parent that may not allow the child to make any decisions, even age appropriate ones, and wants to control every aspect of the child's life. And on the other hand, you may have other extreme, you may have a parent who makes the child, whether whether expressly or by default, makes the child responsible for all these adult level decisions. And that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to make a child responsible for decisions the adults should be responsible for. For example, it is not appropriate to make a child responsible for making sure there's food in the home. Teenagers maybe can have a little bit more responsibility. They're almost adults, right? They can tell you, we're out of X, we're out of Y. But children should not be responsible for making sure there is food available in the house, okay? Parents or children should also not be made responsible for making sure the parents get up on time to go to work, right? I've heard stories about that. Not the child's responsibility. It's happened in our house. I overslept and my kid was awake gaming on his phone and he was like, well, it's kind of late. Why isn't mom up yet? I got up late. I overslept. We were late to school. That's on me. He was like 9 or 10 years old at the time. That's on me. That's my bag. It is not his responsibility to make sure I am up on time. That is my responsibility. It is also not appropriate for a child to be asked by the parents, hey, we only have X amount of money this month available to spend, so what should we spend it on? That puts so much pressure on a child. It just pains me to think that a child is made to have to make that decision. What did this family, well, family has a limited budget this month. What should we spend the money on? Food, the mortgage? It's not appropriate to involve a child in those discussions, okay? It is appropriate to allow the child some discretion in spending their birthday money, for example. It's their birthday money. Let them decide how to spend it. And if they blow it all on gaming or whatever, well, it's their birthday money. So, they should have some say in how that money should be spent, in my opinion. The reason there is such a high risk of parentifying Capricorn children is because Capricorn children are very comfortable taking on added responsibility. They are very dutiful. It is arguably the most loyal sign of the zodiac. they're very comfortable taking on extra duties and burdens. And you have to make sure you are not burdening the child too much, especially with adult level responsibilities. The parent may think, well, the child looks to me like they're fine taking on all this extra burden. But Capricorn is a very stoic, reserved sign. They may not articulate that they are feeling burdened. They may not articulate that they are just taking on too much of a mental load, of an emotional load. So it's the parent's job to realize that, okay? And on that note, make time to check in with your Capricorn children to see if they are feeling overburdened or they want to talk about anything. You can't always assume they're going to tell you every little thing that occurs to them, because again, it's tends to be an emotionally reserved sign. So make sure you are always emotionally available for your Capricorn child. Once in a while, have one-on-one time with your Capricorn child with no other kids around, and make sure that you're asking them to check in with how they are doing with school, with family stuff. Open door policy. They can talk about anything they want to talk about, anything that's on their mind. Okay, next. Accept and encourage Capricorn's focus on material resources. It is an earth sign. Capricorn is largely focused on material resources, whether it's accumulating money, real estate when they're older, things like that. So I have heard parents say things to children like, it's greedy to want money or it's bad to want money. That's not true. Number one, it's not true. Number two, if your child likes money or accumulating money makes them feel secure and financially secure, that's not a bad thing. Okay. To me, money means financial security, stability in the home life. Money means freedom, because if I have enough investments, I don't have to work a 9-to-5 day job and be chained to a desk. And many people feel that way. We're in the midst of the great resignation. I'm thrilled that many people are leaving their 9-to-5 desk job and doing things that they love, whether it's spending time with their family, travel, or other jobs. I'm thrilled about that. I'm thrilled to hear stories from people like that. So money means freedom and independence. It is not just the accumulation of riches to swim through a big vat of gold like Scrooge McDuck. As appealing as that may sound to many of us, myself included, it is ultimately about freedom and independence. And when you criticize that, when your Capricorn child likes to accumulate money for these reasons or gives importance to finances, and you criticize that, you are criticizing what they identify with. That's criticizing the intrinsic nature of the child, and we never want to do that. We never want to make or suggest to the child that they should feel bad about how they intrinsically are, okay? Because you're essentially pushing the intrinsic, authentic self down and making the child repress it further, and we don't want that. There's too much of that in the world anyway. One great thing to do to teach Capricorn kids financial responsibility is give them an allowance early on, give them discretion with how to spend it. You can also buy one share of a stock for them or one share of a mutual fund and track in the stock market and take that moment to teach them, look, just by leaving this money here, look how much it accumulates. My son will do that. Hey, can we check my investments, Mom? I want to check my investments to see how much money I've made just by virtue of it sitting there. You teach the importance of saving. You teach the importance of investing, of being frugal, of living within your means. These are all worthwhile things to teach children. So with Capricorn, because they typically have this intrinsic, they give it importance intrinsically to material resources. This makes it easier to teach them the importance of these things. Older kids, you can get older kids a debit card, and then they can see their purchases when they spend all their money, which a lot of kids do. They spend it as soon as they get it, and then they're wondering why they don't have any more money. Well, here's your list of transactions. Now you can budget, or you can choose to save, or you can choose to maybe make different financial decisions next time. You want kids to make financial mistakes as early as possible, because I've seen tons of adults make financial mistakes, and if these adults had been taught about financial security and financial literacy as children, maybe they would not have made the mistakes as adults. And maybe they would have, when they did make the mistakes as children, they would have been way less serious and have way less of a dramatic effect on their finances and their credit score and things like that. So my point is, teach these financial lessons as early as possible. And even though you may be frustrated that your kid is blowing all their money on V-Bucks or in-game purchases or what you consider to be, not worthwhile things, that's a learning experience for them when they spend the money and then don't have money to buy things that they want later. This is all a learning experience, and this comes with time. And remember, children are naturally impulsive. That's just how their brains work. Their brains are still developing. So adolescents, teenagers are extremely impulsive, and this includes spending money. Now, Capricorn's natural bent is to save and accumulate money. But if you have a Capricorn child who has some other energy, like maybe air energy or fire energy very strongly in the chart, that may be the tendency to save and accumulate may be tempered by this impulsivity. So they may present as more impulsive. But typically, Capricorn energy presents as having a bent to save or accumulate resources. And this is not a bad thing, especially now where spending money is easier than ever. It is so easy to spend money on your credit card, especially when you don't even have to remember your credit card number most of the time. So remember that Capricorn's focus on material resources is a good thing. And my point is that focus should be encouraged, not discouraged. And if you don't know enough about personal finance and the stock market and things like that, learn with your child, take a course together. That's a great bonding experience. Okay, this next point, I love this because it's something I practice and I teach my son all the time. Encourage Capricorn children to question authority. Now, Capricorn likes to be right, and they think they're right most of the time. And frankly, they're right much of the time, if not most of the time. They just are. So Capricorn is usually accepting of authority. They give importance to people in authority. Okay, not a bad thing. On the other hand, people in authority are frequently wrong. Okay, we all know from stories we've heard including from news stories, people in authority should be challenged most of the time. In fact, the United States, my country, we were kind of founded by people who challenged authority. So challenging authority is kind of an American tradition. At least that's how I see it. And that's what I teach my child. So this is a kind of a double-edged sword because Capricorn typically has respect for people in authority, but also needs to understand that people in authority are frequently wrong. It is okay to question authority, and it is okay to challenge authority. And this includes at school. Now, there's a respectful way to challenge authority, and there's not. So that doesn't mean they should be disrespectful. Capricorn children should always be respectful, but it's okay for them to challenge authority. Now, as I have spoken about in other videos, children first assert their independence and challenge authority at home, the safe space. That is where they first attempt this phenomenon, okay? And how the parents respond to this phenomenon has a great bearing on how the child will develop emotionally and intellectually, right, into adulthood. So if the parents respond with an iron fist and not letting the child have any choices and want to teach abject obedience, the child will learn that their opinions don't matter, their feelings don't matter, their preferences don't matter, that they should always repress what they want for the other person. The problem with that is, as I've said multiple times on this channel, that very often, most of the time I would say, leads to children growing up into adults who become people pleasers and who always do what the other person wants. They never do what they want, and they repress what they want, right? And they allow other people to take advantage of him. They can't say no, essentially. They think that their no doesn't matter, that even if they don't want to do something, if the other person wants to do it, they have to do it. And the problem with that is that many people don't have your best interest at heart. They don't. They have their best interest at heart, okay? So one thing you need to teach Capricorn children is that you should be questioning authority, not necessarily taking action against authority, but at least intellectually questioning authority. And you should stand up for yourself, always, okay? Teach them to think for themselves, allow them to self-champion. I don't believe in talking back. It's self-championing. A child has the right to defend themselves respectfully, always respectfully, to the parents and to the teachers. As we mentioned earlier, Capricorn kids tend to be, because they are very comfortable taking on this role of responsibility and duty, and they're very serious early on, they can be what some parents call bossy with the parents. Like they almost treat the parents like the parents are the kids. So you have to be careful about not parentifying. but also you have to be careful how you respond to that. This is Capricorn's natural bent. It's kind of to be a leader, and that's a good thing. But sometimes they may need gentle reminders. Hey, I will always, listen to and value your input. Ultimately, this is a decision for the parents to make, right? With your input, depending on what the decision is about, obviously. And there are just some decisions kids just can't make. It's just not appropriate for children to make, right? So, but you always want to make sure that your Capricorn child understands that you listen to them, you value their input, and you will take it into consideration whenever you are able to. Okay, as we said earlier, Capricorn children are very calculating. These are children that are able to make short-term sacrifices for longer-term gains. I want to take a moment and really let that sink in. It is a sign that is able to make short-term sacrifices in order for longer-term gains, okay? It is a sign that is able and willing to wait for fulfillment. This is an extremely important characteristic to have. It makes the sign really, really unique, because in this day and age where everyone wants instant gratification, you want a date, you get an app. You want a meal, you get an app. You can have wine delivered. All these things. You want a sitter, you want whatever. You can get these things so quickly. You need to look up some information. You have your phone right there to look it up. Everyone wants instant gratification all the time, right? Few people are really willing to make the short-term sacrifices to get the longer-term gains, because many people can't even see that far ahead. Capricorn is not like that. Okay, they can see far ahead. Remember, Capricorn, the symbol of Capricorn is the goat. We've all seen those pictures of goats on that high mountain summit. We don't even know how they get up there, but they do, and it takes them a long time, but they get there. That's Capricorn. So this is a really interesting characteristic of the sign that should be fully encouraged by parents. Part of that characteristic means Capricorn needs time to make decisions, and it's a very calculating sign. It thinks about things from all angles before it makes decisions. It's kind of the opposite of Aries in that respect, even though they're not opposite signs. Aries and other fire signs too, but especially Aries, will just make a decision, will just take an action without thinking about consequences, almost as if it doesn't even realize there are consequences to the decision. It's almost like the amygdala is so overdeveloped, they just act, right? So they'll just act and then deal with the consequences on the back end. Capricorn prefers to deal with all the possible consequences on the front end before even making the decision. Very calculating. They need time to make decisions. They can't make rush decisions. And I've seen a lot where parents just get impatient with the children taking their time. And they tend to rush the kids or show impatience or sigh dramatically. And I used to do some of that stuff too. But kids need time, especially Capricorn kids need time to make decisions. This should be encouraged. And if your Capricorn child just needs to make a decision and they just you can't afford a lot of time, you can tell them, look, I know this makes you uncomfortable to have to make a snap decision like this. I'm sorry. But I'm sure that whatever decision you make will be the right one. But try, when you can, try really hard not to rush them or show any impatience with them, because this is a process they need to go to. This is just the nature of the sign. And kind of very much connected with that, Capricorn is an energy that likes to plan ahead. So other signs may be very impulsive. All children like to know what's coming next. Earth sign children especially like to know what's coming next because they're so grounded, right? It's not like air. I'm an air sun sign. I'm very scattered all the time. Fire sometimes burns uncontrollably. Earth is very grounded, right? So they like to know what's coming next, and they need to know they need to have a stability of routine and things like that. So if you are a fire sign or air sign dominant parent, you're going to have to recognize that about your Capricorn child and honor that about them. Okay. That they don't like last minute changes of plans. So when you have to change plans last minute and they get upset, that's why. Okay. Don't make them feel bad for getting upset. Acknowledge that this is difficult for them, that next time you will try your best to plan ahead and make sure they know what's coming next and not make these last minute decisions, but that sometimes they're unavoidable, and then move on. Okay. Don't dwell on it. Okay, and connected to that, as we mentioned earlier, Capricorn children need a lot of stability and security at home. They need consistency from parents. I have not always been good at that. As a Gemini sun parent, I'm not always consistent. but I'm trying very hard. I realize that you need to be consistent as a parent, and especially with earth sign children, because they need that stability. They need the security at home, and they need consistency from parents. If you're like me and you had your own childhood trauma, you're going to have a lot of emotional triggers. And sometimes your child will unwittingly and unintentionally trigger you emotionally, almost producing in you a fight or flight response. The child doesn't intend to. They don't know, but you may have that response because of what happened to you as a child. And it's taken me a long time to work through those triggers because that is my issue, not my child's. So if that's the case for you, I suggest that you review my video on reparenting yourself while you're parenting your children. I have some tips for you there, but it is imperative that you work through those childhood triggers to make sure you're not overreacting and then projecting them onto your child, because it's not your child's fault. Those are your issues to deal with. Okay. And the last kind of big point is be open to learning from your Capricorn child. Capricorn children are a wealth of knowledge. They love to learn. They love to kind of do adult things. And part of that is learning things that the adults like to learn, like we mentioned, personal finance, financial literacy, other subjects. And I say this, I've said this in other videos, all kids are capable of teaching parents things. Be open to learning from your Capricorn child. That gives them kind of a sense of importance, and that's very emotionally fulfilling for them, because Capricorn likes to feel important. They like to feel that they're contributing something to the family and to the team. They love that. They feel very loyal toward the family, have a ton of loyalty toward the family, and they love to feel that they are contributing. Make sure you are acknowledging that. Tell them, you are very helpful. Thank you so much for your help. Or I love it that you help at home. Or you taught me something. I did not know that before. Thank you for teaching me that. That goes a long way with them, and it bonds you to your child and creates for a more peaceful parent-child relationship ultimately. Okay, and we're going to close with a few positive parenting tips as always. As we said, make sure you're always praising your Capricorn child's good qualities. You're very loyal, you're very responsible, you're helpful. I love it that you're in charge of your own schoolwork, your own workload, your own schedule. Give them a lot of say in their schedule, things that happen to them, when they eat meals, anything age appropriate. Make sure you're giving them some say. I promise you, when you give your child more say in what happens to them, they relax. Their behavior is way less oppositional because they feel important, like they have some control over their own lives. Okay. Be patient. Remember, especially if you're an air dominant like me or a fire dominant, be patient. Don't react. Don't overreact. Make sure you're always communicating from a place of love and support. Okay. Make sure you're not suggesting to your child there's anything wrong with their characteristics. Make sure you're not criticizing them. Most parents don't intend to ever be negative or criticize their children, but it comes out kind of tangentially, and children pick up on that. So you have to be careful about that. Make sure you're praising your Capricorn child's helpfulness, and also do not pressure your Capricorn child to do anything they're not comfortable with. It tends to be an energy that's slow to warm up sometimes, whether that's with making friends or doing new activities. So honor that and don't force them to do something they're not comfortable with. The best way to get a child to try something new is for the parents to do it, for the child to see the parents engage in that activity, or for the child to see their peers engage in that activity. That's a much better way of getting a child to try something new than to force them to do something. A quick story is my son, one time we were going to go on a local cruise on the river. And we told him this, and he said, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. He was like 6 years old, around 6 years old at the time. And I think he had this idea of going on a boat that was very scary, and he didn't want to go. And some of the people in my family says, well, you have to go. And I told him, I said, look, you don't have to go. I don't want you to do anything you're not comfortable with. Come to the dock with us. And if you don't want to get on the ship, I will wait with you on the pier and we'll just window shop. Okay? Or just hang around. You don't have to get on the boat. I promise. If you don't want to get on the boat, you do not have to. We went to the pier. We got on the boat. Everyone gets on the boat. He took my hand and he got on the boat. He didn't say anything and he had fun and he stood on the deck of the boat. In his mind, the boat was something very scary. Like probably in his mind, it was this rickety old like sailboat, right? So he had that idea of it in his mind. And I knew that I was fairly certain that once he saw the boat, he was going to want to get on. But it was way easier to take the approach I took than to force him to do something, right? So remember that. It's going to be easier for you. my ultimate goal with these videos is to make your life, the parent, easier. Okay. So a lot of the stuff I talk about, it's to make your relationship with your child just easier and more pleasant. Okay. And it's all around a better situation for everybody. Not only that, but it bonds you to your children more closely. And lastly, apologize. If you are wrong about something, if you mess up, apologize. That goes a long way with a Capricorn child. Man, they will be like, wow, like I'm important enough that my parent apologized to me. Parents, in my opinion, do not apologize often enough, frequently enough to kids. I think that's changing. When I talk to a lot of parents, especially moms, they're able to apologize. It does not make you less of a parent or a less authoritative parent if you apologize to a child. We all mess up. You would obviously expect your child to apologize to you if they messed up. So you should apologize to your child and make sure that you're also working on changing your behavior that you are apologizing for, that it's not an empty apology. So that's all that we had for today. I encourage you to go back, if you haven't already, to review my video on how to parent your Capricorn sun child. I have one on how to parent your Capricorn moon child. And I have a video, of course, on how to parent your Capricorn child when you're an Aries parent. It's a very interesting dynamic. So thank you so much for watching today, and we'll be back next week. Take care.